Hello YouTube and Whooper Club fans, Fruit Taco here, coach of the Route 1 Birbs, here to bring you the Season 11 Week 5 feature match between my own Birbs and Illogic's Buffalo Bouffalant. But I am very excited to say that I won't be alone this time, as Illogic is actually right here with me. Say hello to the folks at home.
This is the part where you want me to say hello. Hello, I am Illogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you've introduced me on several videos, and I finally get to introduce you. I was going to make a video on this match for this channel, and Illogic was going to make one for his own channel, so we said, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do it together? On that note, please check out the description, which will have a link to Illogic's video, where we go over how we each approached the matchup and built our teams. With that out of the way, though, we're going to briefly reintroduce the teams we brought, and then jump straight into picking apart the match turn by turn. Logic, why don't you tell us what you're bringing?
Sure, so we're going to start off kind of with the defensive core in the bottom left there. We've got Bronzong and Lantern. Bronzong, the physical defensive piece. Lantern, the special defensive piece. I think Lantern looks really good in the matchup, and the ability to go kind of between these two to pick apart the team a little bit would be amazing. Nidoqueen is kind of the bridge between the defensive and offensive piece, as it has been for a few weeks in a row now. The coverage is just amazing on Nidoqueen. It has a bulky profile while being able to break a little bit, and it's breaking for those 3 choice users, 2 Scarf users, and a Specs. The Specs for Bombi trying to break things apart, the Sock and Kartana, mid-game and late-game Sweeper and Cleaner, respectively there. Trying to see if we can pick apart team for those big beaters in the back.
Excellent. And I'll be bringing an offensive team built around powerful stabs from Volcanion and Primarina. Blunder Policy on Volcanion and Choice Scarf on Primarina should hopefully give them plenty of chances to throw off big moves. Ferrothorn and Cobalion are here to be some bulky switch-ins that can start putting problem Pokemon in range to be KO'd by those water types. And Thundurus and Latias are here to do the same, as well as enable the sweepers with Prankster Defog to get rid of sticky webs, and a fun Tailwind Healing Wish combo to maybe give a Weakmon a Sunshot at cleaning up at the end of the game. And with all of that introduction out of the way, it is time to get into the meat of this video, the match itself. And here we are at team preview. From my side, this is actually looking pretty good. Lantern is the only water and fire resist. Bronzong's really the only other bulk. That's actually pretty amazing for my game plan. I see Sock and Rabombi, which I both, I definitely thought the Rabombi was coming, thought the Sock might come, expecting, like webs from the Rabombi, maybe a choice item on the Sock, and Kartana is really scary, but, with a little bit of chip, Primarina can probably go to town on this team. I don't know, Logic, how is this looking for you?
Yeah, the first thing that stands out, obviously no Zero Aura is a big deal, no Glaceon either, and I think the biggest thing for me is both those take a ton of pressure off of my Bronzong to be walling all of that. Only a couple of possible physical attackers, and the Colbur Berry looks a whole lot less useful now as well. I also did a little bit of speed cheating with a couple of Montier. Sock in particular, Scarf would not be outspeeding Zero Aura. Seeing that not there also helps out a ton. So I think potentially we can just go ahead with the game plan, although I see a couple of steel types there, so 3 Mons having Toxic on them, we're going to need to chip those down first.
Sure, alright, well let's dive into the match. We're going to see Lantern for you and Cobalion for myself. I saw no Hydreigon for this Cobalion to check, so I'm okay throwing it out to, maybe pivot, get some good damage off on something, especially, like a lead Rabombi trying to set some webs. What was your game plan here?
Yeah, I kind of started and stopped in the game plan here. I know that I've been leading Torn and Nidoqueen for pretty much every single week, and I thought if there's anything that we can do to switch things up, Lantern is pretty okay, because I figured Rabombi isn't relatively obviously to try and set up the webs. However, if that's really what I was thinking about, or if I thought that you'd be setting up your own hazards with a Steel type, sure looks like Nidoqueen would have been the better play anyways, but either way, I like the idea of having a potential Volt Switch on turn 1, soak up a hit from something that I would struggle to switch into anyways, like one of those water types.
Alright, and we're going to see on that turn 1, I just go straight for the close combat, do a huge chunk of damage, and you are going to Volt Switch on out of there, bringing in the Bronzong. Now, for me, I was super excited about this turn. The Lantern hard walls my, water type, so I just wanted to get damage on it ASAP, and I did. Also confirming that this is the special defensive Lantern that I was expecting. What were you doing going out into the Bronzong here?
Yeah, so Volt Switch, again, pretty obvious. I don't know if I could have potentially hard switched there. I know I was risking a big hit, and I knew that you couldn't risk to Volt Switch, but I was kind of anticipating Stealth Rock a little bit more. I was kind of expecting, if there was an AV, to potentially even be on something like Pharaoh or even one of the water types to help have a little survivability. So I was kind of expecting this to be, not necessarily going for CC turn one. Taking a big chip onto Lantern, not great, although there is no zero aura for it to check, so that's pretty nice at least. And now I just go into Bronzong. This is the physical defensive piece, and now maybe I can start to chip a couple of things down for everything else.
Sure. All right, so moving on to turn two, I'm just going to Volt Switch on out of there, throw in my Volcanion, and you're going to set up the rocks. I did think about this turn a little. It was like, well, what if he now predicts the Volt Switch and goes back into Lantern, but I decided that would just be too silly. Go out into Volcanion here, get off a big hit on something, and you're getting up those hazards.
Yes, thank goodness we can get up hazard, start again chipping those things down. I want to find out if there are boots anywhere, potentially even break some sashes. Just getting some residual chip would be, I think, pretty huge. I see a couple weaknesses, couple resists, and again, the biggest thing, I need to start scouting some of those items there as well, figuring out what exactly it is so I know how to break down the team as best I can.
Okay, and then we're gonna see. I throw off a big steam eruption here. Do get the burn, and you miss the toxic. That is really unfortunate. I went for the steam eruption because it had a better chance to burn something coming in like that lantern. Then you go for the status and miss. That's really rough.
Yeah, I don't have too many things that can outspeed and Oko this and Nidoqueen if this isn't Scarfed. So I figured getting a couple turns of chip, I knew I could survive anything that you were throwing out. Even I think Specs would have been pretty tough for you to be able to KO, and especially considering that I'm actually heat proof there as well. If you're going for the relatively obvious fire move, I could tank that a little bit better than expected, get the Toxic off, and then maybe start playing some switch games, force you to switch out the turn after. However, that's all pretty much null and void when the Toxic misses, and I'm still trying to figure out an item or anything on this Volcanion.
Sure. And I'm going to go for a focus blast here. I'm actually trying to proc the blunder policy ideally, but it KOs the Bronzong and would smack Lantern if it came in. And now, that just gives you a free Nidoqueen here.
Yeah, now that at the very least, Bronzong didn't do much, and I couldn't go for an offensive move being burnt there, so I figured maybe if you stay in, miss, get a Toxic off, something like that. But that ended up working out. But at the very least, I know you're not choice locked because you're able to swap moves. That means that I know I can at least outspeed with the Nidoqueen here and get some kind of chip off.
Alright, and I'm going to be terrified of that. Switch into the Valley, and you actually go for the Sludge Wave, which makes that a better switch than I had expected. And I was just kind of thinking Cobalion had done its job of getting big damage off on the Lantern, and the things that had brought it to check aren't really here, so it was kind of a safe middle ground switch here for me. Why'd you go for Sludge Wave there?
Yeah, I figured Latias was relatively safe here. There wasn't much else that I could go for aside from the Earth Power. Sludge Wave, I thought, covered all those options relatively well. This is the only thing that would both be immune to it and outspeed. I didn't think Ferrothorn would necessarily come in because I could then turn around and use a fire move on it. This is about the worst case scenario, and it's starting to spiral out of control for me.
Alright, well, turn 6, and now I'm on the back foot here with the big miss of the Zen Headbutt. It would have been really nice, done about half to Nidoqueen, would have meant you didn't really have any Moonblast switch-ins, and then, also have that chance to flinch and actually live. And nope, I miss. Earth Power comes out, kills me, and what do I actually do about this? Well, Latias is probably the only thing that guarantee forces is out, so that's what I send in here. What are you thinking after this turn?
During the turn itself, I wanted to be able to make a big prediction, but thought, I just got burned by something. Let's just go for the straight Earth Power. It looks like he may be trying to sack the Cobalion. I had a feeling it may be Assault Vest after Volt Switch did that much to a -1 special defense Cobalion. I had to do a quick calc to say, yes, this does actually barely KO, and looked around thought, my answers to this aren't that many, and I have a chance to potentially just put away the Cobalion, so I absolutely needed to do that. Latias, though, is pretty much the switch into this every time, and I'm a little concerned as to what this is, considering maybe Calm Mind setup would be pretty terrifying, maybe Specs would be absolutely terrifying. I don't have that many switch-ins to this.
Yeah, and so you are in fact going to go out to the Rabombi, and I go for the Draco Meteor. So I got burnt a little bit there. Oh, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but I didn't have a psychic move on this Latias, so Draco is my only go-to there. I was hoping, maybe you go into Lantern, Draco drops it very low, and then I eject pack out into Primarina and start putting huge pressure on your team. Probably could have expected the Bombi and gone for Tailwind, but I didn't, and definitely not a great turn for me.
Yeah, it's a big deal. This being not the general sticky web set either, though. Too going at Turbombi, I knew it could outspeed the Latias the turn after, if that so happens to be what I need to do. Also, figured the only couple of moves that really punish would be a potentially Psy Shock, because I am a little bit specially bulky. That's kind of what Turbombi is, and potentially Mystical Fire could have come out. I thought that would have been kind of cute on into the Nidoqueen, considering that I have a Kartana. Kind of expected that as well, to lower the Nidoqueen's damage output, potentially even get like a weakness policy proc on it or something, and also covers the switch into Rabombi. With that said, I still outspeed the Latias, so I think this was relatively safe. There are still a few resists to Moonblast and Bug Buzz still left, namely that Ferrothorn, so I thought maybe you can force the Ferrothorn out a little bit early too by going this, and potentially playing a little bit aggressively now that I've kind of gotten the front foot with that Sun Headbutt miss.
Sure. All right. Well, going into turn 8 here, you're just going to U-turn right on out of there. Here comes the Lantern, and I'm just going to take this opportunity to get rid of the rocks. I was expecting, webs or some sort of bug move coming out, so, Thundurus was, the best answer to those, and, just getting rid of rocks, it's not bad. Could also then, lower the evasion of a Lantern coming in if I wanted to hit it with a Focus Blast. So just kind of a middle ground play for me.
Yeah, Rabombi did still outspeed the Latias, and I was worried about, again, still practicing a weakness policy or anything like that, and staying in seemed a little bit risky, so the U-turn out still have done enough to break a sub, which is something else I had in the back of my mind. Did a little bit of chip, and then for Thundurus, this is about all that Lantern can do right now, is be able to Volt Absorb from the Thundurus and kind of cover whatever it needs to do. Really, I just need to try and get a little bit of chip onto Thundurus so that something else can potentially come in and make a couple of different moves a little more spammable, something like even Close Combat or Leaf Blade. Thundurus isn't the most tanky, so if I get a little bit of damage, potentially can get it into range of those moves too.
Sure. Now, the Lantern is getting a bit too healthy for my liking, so I just have to hit it with Focus Blast. And then here's the Rabombi again, and you're going to see it's going to force me out into my Ferrothorn as really the only thing that, like you said, wants to be taking these hits.
Yes, and thankfully being able to get all that chip onto Thundurus was definitely for something. Also curious to see the defog there. I didn't think it was doing that much to your team. However, seeing you prioritize defog there told me maybe this is not Boots Volcanion, but I also know it's not a choice item. Starting to wonder about what it was, maybe a Shucka Berry, and that started to get me a little bit worried too.
Oh.
However, after the Scald and Volt Switch chip, I know that it's in range of a Bug Buzz at that point. Actually, with specs, Bug Buzz doing 34% and Thundurus down to, I believe, about 32%. So at that point, it seemed relatively free to be able to go in and click a move at least, especially with Ferrothorn. I think relatively obvious switch in.
Well, now, I'm expecting a fairy move, but you talk about that specs Bug Buzz, and oh, that's damage. So, I do the calcs, I see, oh, that's specs. So that means it's probably not webs. So it means it's probably Scarfed Kartana in the back. Oh, crap. And I'm rapidly trying to recalculate how I am planning on taking apart this team of yours.
Yes, thankfully I got this chip onto Fair. I don't have that many great ways to deal with this. Yes, I have close combat. I really don't want to be locking into Sacred Sword against this team either, because I need Kartana to be able to do a little bit more heavy listing. But thank goodness I got this chip from Rabombi. Actually starting to look a little bit closer now towards Moonblast, just doing a ton of damage to everything. It's just this and the Volcanion left, and potentially that is starting to emerge as a win con itself.
Sure. You're going to switch out here. I'm just going to set up the spikes. I was worried about, Sturdy on like a Choice Scarf or Choice Banded Sock to, get off like two really good hits, and I just needed to get something up. The chip is gonna help, with like lantern switching in and stuff. So seemed good, even if I was risking letting Ferrothorn pretty much go down to another Bug Buzz. And
Probably for the best. Everything I had left was grounded too, so that at least does a little bit of chip to everything. Like I said, covers for the off choice item as well. Yes, I could have gotten Ferrothorn extremely low with another choice specs Bug Buzz. I found that relatively unlikely it'd stay in, but even if you did, I wanted to be able to go into my only actual fire coverage to be able to threaten it out either way. So Nidoqueen about ready to start ripping things apart again.
sure. And here I eat my Akaberry, not going to do anything for me at that low health. And this was probably a big misplay on my part. I was hoping that you'd overpredict. I could get off some like good power whip chip damage on Nidoqueen for the Primarina and the Thunderous since I had missed that Zen headbutt, but in hindsight, the chances of you clicking like Sludge Wave were just so low that I should have switched into probably Primarina or Latias. Pharaoh was, my even at just half, it meant that Kartana would have to be more careful about its move selection, and Pharaoh could have then been also a sack later, but not the greatest. And then this is sending out Thunder is also a misplay. He's kind of a middle ground, being able to hit Nidoqueen with Psychic and also anything that comes in, but just sending in Primarina and clicking Hydro Pump with spikes would have two-shot anything. But I was just so scared about Lantern healing up on a miss or something that I went with this middle ground play. I don't know, a lot to pick apart there for me, but you just had to go for the safe flamethrower.
Yeah, relatively easy for me. After flubbing the play, expecting Latias earlier, I thought, let's just go straight forward. This is about the only big thing that I have that I know I can KO the Ferrothorn with and be able to switch moves before or after as well. So I think those end up being relatively straightforward. And then Thunderous coming in was a surprise to me. I think I look at 4 months on my opponent's side of the field that have 3 of them with stab moves that are super effective, and then it's the Thunderous that comes in. But I think I was kind of underestimating the overall tankiness and bulkiness of Nidoqueen being at full health still. That Zen
Mm-hmm.
Headbutt miss still haunting you this far in the match.
Yeah, it definitely was not ideal. Yeah, if like that had Zen had come in and I could fire off like a Moonblast. Don't know what the calcs look like as far as if I would have lived a Sludge Wave. But it would have opened up more options, and that Lantern is just in my head. I just can't take the risks I want to, because if it starts healing back up with those lefties, there's not a whole lot my team can do about it at this point. So we're gonna move on to turn 14. I do get off that big psychic chip, and Thunderous does go down. I wanted that psychic chip, to get Nidoqueen in range of those non-super effective hits, and I'm wondering here, all right, well, what do I do about this Scarf Kartana in the back? I guess I send out Latias to get a Tailwind up, go into Volcanion, and then hopefully do it again with Healing Wish later? Again, sending in Primarina and just clicking Moonblast was the better play here to break for a proper Volcanion sweep, though. So definitely, I had a good game plan at the start of this match, but I am scrambling here.
And Thunder going down is pretty important for me for a couple of different reasons. One, it does mean that Rabambi's potential Moonblast sweep isn't as appealing. That was, I think, one of the key parts of that. That was a big, fast sweeper that would normally outspeed the Kartana, which I could just continue to spam a move and KO it. So not quite as important. But also important is that the threat of T-Wave is gone. I was super worried about T-Wave slowing down. I have 3 mons that should outspeed your entire team because of 2 Scarfers and Rabambi being that fast. Thought T-Wave's going to stop that sweep that I need at the end short. That's really terrifying, but luckily that was able to go bye-bye. And now with the flying type gone, Mold Breaker Earthquake starting to look a whole lot better too.
Uh-huh. All right, and you're gonna go out here. I'm gonna set up the Tailwind like I had said. Now, what was the Lantern switch there. Were you still
Yeah,
fearing just me taking it out? Were you trying to sack the Lantern instead of the Nidoqueen?
honestly, that's more so it. I was not water absorb, I was volt absorb, and
Yep.
the last electric mon was gone. So at this point, what is Lantern going to do? It's outsped by Volcanion, it's outsped by Latias, which I'm sure has an attack move other than Draco. If it is Draco, hey, I can sack this to that, and then it'll be -2, and I can get a free switch into just about anything else. And the Primarina, which I might outspeed, but let's be real. I don't think Primarina is coming into this match with 0 speed investment. So if everything is just going to outspeed me, probably just hit me with a stab and KO me anyways. The least I can do is at least jump block here and maybe save the Nidoqueen for later, because Nidoqueen at least does outspeed both Volcanion and Primarina. I did EV it specifically to outspeed max speed Volcanion, so for sure that, and there is still potentially a Scarf or something on Primarina. I predicted it originally in Volcanion, but thinking maybe the Primarina has it.
All right. Well, I set up my Tailwind for Volcanion, and here he is. And oh, you went for Protect. And here I'm just going, oh, I see. Well,
For us, right? I believe in a previous season when we had faced in the quarterfinals, I was able to protect on the last turn before Gorgeist went down to a little bit of chip as well, and that really opened up an Arctovich game plan for me. Protect starting to see. I think it's one of the most underrated moves in draft. Not only does it help with lefties recovery, which is relatively obvious, help run out the timer on Toxic, which again is pretty obvious, but also all these other weird effects, and especially that you're known to bring things like Trick Room, things like manual weather setters that you may not be able to predict ahead of time. Protect actually has quite a bit of utility, and even more so here for Tailwind, being able to stall out turns because I don't have anything to outspeed anything in a Tailwind.
yup, I was really hoping that you would have been Heal Bell on it to, get rid of potential Thunder Waves, Toxics, but oh, there's Protect there, and I'm just, oh crap, he's just gonna stall out Tailwind. Uh,
Yeah, that the only option I have is if on the last turn I want to try and Volt Switch out or Hard Switch, and it's just a prediction game here, trying to get the last turn of Tailwind down.
yep,
I get either between Volt Switch or Hard Switch, probably into my only Earth Power resistant Rabombi.
I hope that I pray that for some reason you don't click Protect and you click Protect. Well, darn. So I mean that was a pretty obvious turn. It would have been real silly for you not to have, but you know, a man can hope. Then we're gonna move on after that turn. You're gonna go out into the Rabombi. Oh, and I just click Earth Power again, which it resists. I really wanted to predict the Rabombi and click Fire Blast, but I really needed that Lantern dead, so I had to click the Earth Power there. There's the Rabombi. Maybe I could have clicked Focus Blast to try and trigger the Plunder Policy? Would that have been the optimal move? I'd still be outsped by Scarf Kartana, but I could live one hit and then actually OHKO everything after spikes? Potentially?
Potentially.
Yeah, I guess that was the play, but the Lantern being all up in my head, I just kept thinking I can't risk it getting more and more lefties recovery.
Even with spikes chipping away at it a little bit, hindering the leftovers recovery, I now do finally see a use for it to stay around, and that is protecting out the Tailwind turns. Say Latias is able to come in later in Tailwind, I can at least go out into lane turn, protect, install 1, maybe 2 turns with it, especially if I can get an overprediction from you. Say Latias tries and Draco, and on the last turn of Tailwind, you switch out to something, and I'm able to get a Volt switch off. Something cheeky like that potentially. Lantern actually has a little bit of usefulness now, and the Rabombi, yes, Moonblast looks really nice, but I actually have a couple of different options now for the Latias if I can just get Chip onto this, which I failed to do earlier with Toxic from Bronzong.
Sure. And you're going to get some good chip there, and the special attack drop. Get the Steam Eruption critical hit right after. I'm sitting here thinking, all right, I have Healing Wish, so taking a decent hit here and isn't really that big a deal, and I can get rid of this Rabombi for Latias, which would be great. Special attack drop is unfortunate, I still not sure it could have even lived. I think it came down to like its actual exact HP value, not the percents that we can see on Showdown, as to whether or not it had a chance to live there. But I cut through that anyway, and then all right, well, now with the special attack trap, whatever comes in is gonna have a better time. But oh, who knows?
It was relatively tempting to go Nidoqueen here. As I said, I was kind of saving it to be able to outspeed this, but the Latias is still immune to Earth Power, and Hoo Boy Sludge Wave doesn't KO, so scrambling a little bit to see which move could actually KO this and hit everything else. Oh yeah, right in front of my face. Actually have Earthquake, because the next line of text is probably the important one, which is that it breaks the mold. So thankfully Sock is going to be able to put a dent into this and probably something else as well before going down. That's really all I need, is one more death so that Kartana can start to come into its own and look like I can clean up somehow here.
Sure, there it's breaking the mold, and I just let Volcanion go down here. So, I see that you're breaking the molds. Okay, that's a lie. I was all up in the calcs and didn't even notice that, which is something that I really should be better at. Always seems I'm missing abilities, items, just acting on wrong information, but I was thinking, alright, Scarf Jolly is only a roll to KO here, so maybe I live this? Didn't really feel like I thought that was kind of my best bet, switching into something it was gonna get potentially chunked instead, unless you for some reason locked yourself into like close combat. That's only a normal effective against Volcanion, resisted by everything else. So I really didn't know what to do here and just bet it on that. Well, maybe he's not adamant and maybe I live, and I didn't.
And I was definitely still worried about that Shuckleberry too. Again, we saw no choice item. We saw probably not boots because prioritizing defog on Thundurus. What item is it that would have been about the worst case scenario, be able to survive either Nidoking or Sock's hits? Thankfully, it didn't work out. But if it had survived, probably would have had to go out into Nidoqueen at that point. Still would have to save Cart in the back, I think, because there is still, even at this point, really not a spammable move for Cart to be able to finish off both of your last mons. So hoping Sock can get a little bit more done here.
Sure. All right. Well, I see here that you have at this point you have the sacks to KO with Kartana, and that's really the sacks to win with your Scarf Kartana. So that's really it. So I'm going into Latias here, and Draco is a roll to KO, and it's like, all right, well, if I get that, maybe I can make him play a prediction game with his Kartana afterwards. And, well, there's the Scarf, there's the Mold Breaker, and I don't KO either. Um, so, that's awkward. And, I guess I have to go into Primarina here on this turn now. I'm gonna, take some Earthquake damage, but I don't know.
Yeah, I did the calc afterwards. It looks like it was about a 3 in 8 chance to KO the Sock there. I don't know how much it necessarily mattered that Marina got that extra chip too. Like Leaf Blade, whenever I was able to come in, would Oko this. You couldn't exactly swap out into the Latias either. Would have been kind of interesting potentially, but I think could have weathered the storm there. Sock Choice Scarf really coming in clutch. That you're getting all that damage off. Again, now Kartana looks like it may be able to, with a boost, just click either Knockoff or Leaf Blade, even without the item on Latias, and be able to clean up. So Sock surviving pretty nice, but I think more importantly, that damage onto Latias to bring it into range of anything else.
Oh, 100%. And now you EV'd this Sock to outspeed Adamant Zera, and I EV'd this Choice Scarf Primarina to outspeed things, outspeeding that. So I am going to pick up one more KO here with the flip turn, and that's something.
Well,
It's differential. That's
Yeah.
pretty much what I've got at this point. As this Kartana comes out, and maybe I was wrong the whole time. Maybe it's not scarfed, and I actually have this match in the bag. Maybe.
Well, I wouldn't bring two scarves, would I?
No, what? That's so many scarves. Yeah, it's scarf. There's
I'm
the beast
sorry.
boost.
It was so
Uh,
pretty.
all right. Well, Pre-Marie can come in and okay, it gets a consolation KO on the way out. I'm thinking, all right, maybe for some reason I outspeed. Nope, nope. So
This would
that
outsped all
is
Zero.
the battle.
Even at the end there, I think +1 knockoff may have been able to do it, and that I could have even knocked off the scarf, and that Nidoqueen was already at EV to outspeed Volcanion, so of course he'd outspeed Primarina without a scarf. And I don't think I necessarily needed to drop that KO, but it at least guaranteed another one for Kartana. We're fighting for the top of the KO leaderboard here too this season.
That is, as we all know, the real important part of the league. It's not about your win loss, it's not about your differential, it's where you are on the leaderboards.
It's
So,
all
well,
true.
there goes the battle. This loss stung a little bit because I felt really good at team preview. I just didn't prep for the I just prepped for the things that didn't come, and I really lost, kind of sight of the game there in the middle and the end. I do think that there were definitely some switches, some move choices that I could have put a lot more pressure on you in that mid game, maybe had a better end game, but it was a fun match either way. Always do enjoy battling against you.
Always a ton of fun. It feels like the Zen headbutt miss at the beginning was definitely a momentum turner. We saw I had a couple of just awful turns in a row there. I was starting to snowball a little bit. Really needed that miss to be able to bring me back out of that. Saved at least one KO later. For example, the Thunderous may have just been able to KO the Nidoqueen after. Save a lot of headache for you for sure. And then I think potentially underrated thing, the blunder policy. Had that gone off, I think we discussed probably the turn where the Rabambi got KO'd. That probably would have been the best turn. Mind you, you got the minus special attack. But imagine if Blunder Policy goes off there and you essentially get an extra tailwind just on Volcanion. There were definitely a couple of times that, even without extreme luck needed, it could have turned.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm talking about at that point. I think with the spikes, it might have been like a roll to KO. Of course, if I hadn't gotten the special attack drop, but we're talking magical Christmas land anyway. I had gotten that blunder policy, didn't get the special attack drop. I think everything else was at worst a roll to KO after the spikes. So yep, definitely felt like I had plenty of opportunities to claw my way back there, but I didn't, and that's one of my weaknesses as a player. Is I just think I'm relatively inconsistent, not great at juggling all of the little things as matches going on. Having that Nidoqueen, the Scarfed Cart, recovering Lantern, I just had so much stuff going around in my head that I could not formulate a clear game plan, and you just played the end great, as you tend to do.
There was, of course, the early Toxic Miss from my Bronzong. I don't think it really compares that much to your Zen Headbutt Miss on Cobalion. I think the Toxic Miss I was able to recover from because of the later play with Rabambi, where I ended up sacking it to get the Moonblast chip. Got about the same chip that I could have otherwise. The Cobalion Miss, even if you were the best player in the world, I don't think that was something you could necessarily make up for. So I don't think you necessarily need to beat yourself up about this one either. That was honestly just a huge momentum shift too. I was so afraid going into this matchup. I'm glad to have escaped with a win, even if it was just 2-0. Even if it was thanks to a little bit of luck too. Here's hoping we don't have to play again in the playoffs.
Oh, yep. I would love if I make it in the playoffs and someone can knock you out ahead of time. Although, we'll see in the power rankings what my playoff chances actually look like. But that will do it for our coverage of this feature match. Another huge thanks to Illogic for the great battle, as well as joining me here. Remember, if you didn't watch the first video where we explained our team building process, make sure to check the description for a link to that video over on Illogic's channel. Anything you'd like to add?
Oh, just really appreciate you coming on. This was one of my favorite matches of the season so far, for sure. This was an absolute blast. Thanks for having me again. Go check out the power rankings as well. I do that with Steve, and occasionally you can guest here as well sometimes. So go check out all the Goober Club League content we've got going on. We're coming up to the playoffs too, so it's exciting times.
It is an exciting time for sure. I've been Fruit Taco here with Illogic, and I'll see you in next week's feature match.